The great station floated in silence above Viridian Prime, a massive structure of silver and light that housed the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Inside its main chamber, Park Min-ho stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the alien delegates through calm eyes. He had been Earth's ambassador for 7 years now, and every season brought the same result. But hope was a stubborn thing, and humans were nothing if not stubborn. Beside him, Choi Eun-ji reviewed her tablet one final time. The data was perfect. Humanity had met every requirement, exceeded every benchmark. They had proven themselves peaceful in trade, helpful to struggling colonies, and respectful of galactic law. On paper, they were model citizens. In practice, they remained unwelcome guests. Captain Kim Do-yeon shifted in his formal uniform, the medals on his chest catching the strange blue light of the chamber. He had fought in the Martian conflicts when colonists demanded independence from Earth. Those battles taught him that sometimes violence was necessary to protect what mattered. But here, among the stars, humanity tried a different path. They tried patience. The Velkari matriarch rose from her seat. Her 6 arms spreading in what the humans had learned was a gesture of finality. Her skin held the color of deep ocean water, and her voice carried the weight of 1,000 years. She spoke in the common tongue, the language all species learned for council business. The application of humanity for membership in the Galactic Council has been reviewed, she began. Her words fell like stones into still water. The Council finds that humanity continues to demonstrate concerning patterns of behavior. Park Min-ho felt Eun-ji tense beside him. He kept his face neutral, a skill he had perfected over years of disappointment. Your species shows excessive aggression in dispute resolution. Your emotional responses remain unpredictable and volatile. Your expansion into new territories proceeds at an alarming rate that suggests conquest rather than colonization. The matriarch's eyes, all 4 of them, focused on the human delegation. The Council suggests humanity return in 100 of your years for reconsideration. Perhaps 200 would be more appropriate. In the observation gallery above, Lee Hana gripped the railing. She was only 26, the youngest member of the delegation. Brought along because she had studied 17 alien languages and could read the subtle signals in alien body language. Right now, those signals told her everything. The council members looked bored. Some were already preparing to leave. This was routine for them, a formality. They had never intended to accept humanity's application. The realization hit her like cold water. All her years of study, all the time she spent trying to understand these species and their cultures, all the effort humanity poured into becoming acceptable. It was theater. The Council didn't want humanity to improve. They wanted humanity to stay out. Park Min-ho bowed respectfully, the gesture precise and proper. The delegation thanks the Council for its consideration. We will return to Earth and relay your decision. No argument, no plea. No desperate promises to do better. Eun-ji glanced at him in surprise, but Min-ho's expression revealed nothing. He had learned something important in that moment, something that changed everything. He could see it in the way the matriarch dismissed them with a casual wave, the way the other council members were already talking amongst themselves about other matters. Humanity was not a serious concern. They were a nuisance to be dealt with every few years. Nothing more. The walk back to their ship felt longer than usual. The station's corridors were filled with aliens from dozens of species, all of them moving with the confidence of belonging. They wore the symbols of council membership openly, small badges that marked them as part of something greater. Humans wore visitor tags that expired after 30 days. Aboard the vessel named Resilience, the delegation gathered in the conference room. The ship would take 4 days to return to Earth, 4 days of silence and disappointment. But this time felt different. Captain Kim Do-yeon was the first to speak. They never intended to accept us. His voice was quiet but firm. This was never about meeting their standards. They simply don't want us. Yunji nodded slowly. The data supports this. I ran comparisons with other species who gained membership. Several had worse conflict records than us. 2 had active wars during their application period. The Thrain conquered 4 neighboring systems before being accepted. Lee Hana entered the room, her tablet glowing with information. I analyzed the body language of every council member during the session. 17 showed signs of contempt. 23 showed disinterest. Only 6 showed any neutral consideration, and none showed approval or support. Park Min-ho sat at the head of the table, his hands folded. For 7 years he had believed in this process. He had faith that humanity could prove itself worthy, that persistence would win respect. Now he saw the truth. The council didn't respect persistence. They saw it as desperation. What do we recommend to the president? Yunji asked. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Outside the viewports, stars streaked past as the ship entered faster than light travel. Humanity had developed this technology themselves, without council help, because the council refused to share. Humans built their own colony ships, their own defense systems, their own trading networks. They had done all of this while begging for permission to sit at a table that didn't want them. We recommend withdrawal, Minho finally said. Permanent withdrawal of our application. Captain Doyen leaned forward. They'll see that as admission of failure, proof that we're not worthy. Let them, Minho replied. We've spent 15 years seeking their approval. 15 years of holding back our expansion, limiting our military development, and softening our policies to meet their expectations. What has it gained us? Another century of waiting. Another generation of being told we're not good enough. Lee Hana felt something shift inside her. Relief, maybe, or liberation. She had spent her entire adult life trying to understand aliens, trying to make humanity more like them. She had changed her behavior, her speech patterns, even her way of thinking to be more acceptable. And for what? To be dismissed without real consideration. What happens if we stop seeking their approval? She asked quietly. Park Min-ho looked at her, and for the first time in years, she saw him smile. Not the diplomatic smile he wore during negotiations, but something genuine, something almost dangerous. Then we find out who humanity really is, he said. Without their standards, without their expectations. We stop trying to be what they want and start being what we are. The ship continued its journey home, carrying a delegation that left Earth seeking acceptance and returned with something more valuable. They returned with clarity. The day humanity stopped seeking approval was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news reached Earth before the Resilience did. Faster-than-light communication had its advantages, even if the message it carried felt heavy with disappointment. In the streets of New Seoul, protesters gathered with signs demanding change. In Toronto, citizens called for complete isolation from alien affairs. In New Lagos, crowds chanted for humanity to find its own path. The rejection had touched something deep in the human spirit, something that had been building for years. President Yoon Ji-hye stood at the window of her office in Geneva, watching the sun set over the Alps. The United Earth Assembly building hummed with activity below, representatives from every nation gathering for an emergency session. She had been president for 3 years, elected on promises of galactic integration and peaceful cooperation. Now those promises felt hollow. Her secretary entered quietly. Ambassador Park's shuttle has landed. He's on his way up. Jaye nodded. She had read his preliminary report a dozen times, each reading revealing new layers of implication. Park Min-ho was not a man given to emotional reactions or rash recommendations. If he was suggesting withdrawal, he had good reasons. When Park entered, he looked tired but determined. They spoke for an hour, going through every detail of the council session, every gesture and word that revealed the truth. By the end, Ji understood. The council didn't see humanity as future members. They saw them as a problem to be managed. "The assembly wants answers," she told him. "They want to know why we keep failing." "We're not failing," Park replied. "We're being failed." "There's a difference." The next morning, Kang Tae-wan arrived at the assembly building. He was a legend among military personnel, the general who had ended the Martian independence conflict not through overwhelming force but through strategic brilliance and respect for the colonists' concerns. He walked with a slight limp from an old injury, a reminder that peace often came at a cost. He had been invited to speak before the assembly, and he did not waste words. "We've been playing their game by their rules," Kang said, standing before the gathered representatives. "We've limited our fleet size. We've restricted our territorial expansion. We've softened our diplomatic positions. And what has it earned us? Another 100 years of waiting." He pulled up a holographic display showing human colonies scattered across space. "While we've been seeking permission, we've established 147 colonies across 63 star systems. We did this without council support, without their technology, and without their approval. We did it because humans don't wait for permission to survive." Murmurs ran through the assembly. Many had not realized the scale of human expansion. The colonies were independent settlements, not officially counted in Earth's reports to the Council because they wanted to appear less aggressive. Han Sora, Director of Human Colonial Affairs, stood to add her perspective. "These colonies are thriving. They've formed their own trading networks, developed new technologies, and created opportunities for billions of humans. The Council sees 147 colonies. I see 147 reasons we don't need their approval." She displayed economic data that made the assembly members lean forward in interest. Human trade, conducted entirely outside council oversight, had grown to rival the official galactic economy. Independent merchants preferred human ships because they were faster and cheaper. Human goods sold well because they were innovative and practical. Humanity had built a shadow empire while begging to join someone else's club. Dr. Shin Junho took the stage next. He was a small man with gray hair and sharp eyes, someone who had spent 40 years studying alien civilizations. His presentation would change everything. "The Council calls themselves advanced," he began, "but I've analyzed their technological progress over the past 2,000 years. The result is disturbing. They've stagnated." The hologram showed graphs and charts, clear evidence of a pattern. Council species developed rapidly until joining the Council, then their innovation slowed dramatically. Some stopped advancing altogether. "Their emotional restraint isn't wisdom," Junho continued. "It's genetic modification performed so long ago they've forgotten it happened. They've bred out the drives that push species to grow, to struggle, to improve. They call it civilization. I call it slow extinction." He showed images of Council military vessels, designs unchanged for centuries. Their cities looked the same as they did 1,000 years ago. Their art, their music, their literature, all of it had become static, variations on ancient themes rather than genuine innovation. "They don't want us to join because we remind them of what they've lost," Junho concluded. "We're aggressive because we still have the drive to compete. We're emotional because we haven't numbed ourselves to feeling. We're unpredictable because we're still evolving. They don't want members. They want museum pieces." The assembly chamber fell silent. President Yoon Ji-hye stood, her decision made. "Humanity has spent 15 years seeking approval from the Galactic Council. We've modified our behavior, limited our growth, and tried to become what they wanted us to be. Today, I propose we stop." She looked across the gathered representatives, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. "I propose we withdraw our application for council membership permanently, not in anger, not in defiance. simply because we no longer need what they're offering. We will continue to trade with alien species, to explore new worlds, and to help those who need help. But we'll do it as humans, on our own terms, following our own path. The vote took 3 hours. There were debates and concerns, questions about trade sanctions and military threats. But in the end, the decision was clear. 473 votes in favor, 22 against, 8 abstentions. Humanity would withdraw its application. No more waiting for approval. No more modification to meet alien standards. No more pretending to be something they weren't. Park Min-ho watched the vote from the gallery, seated next to Lee Hana and Choi Yoonji. When the results appeared, Hana let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Park replied, "we find out what humanity can really do." The next day, President Yoon Ji-hye sent a formal message to the Galactic Council. It was brief and professional, thanking them for their consideration and informing them that humanity was withdrawing its application indefinitely. There were no accusations, no anger, no dramatic statements, just a simple notification that humanity was choosing a different path. The Council's response came within hours. It was equally brief, acknowledging the withdrawal and wishing humanity well in their future endeavors. The tone suggested they viewed this as confirmation of what they already believed, that humans were not ready for Council membership and likely never would be. But something shifted in that exchange. For 15 years, humanity had been the supplicant, the one seeking acceptance. Now they were just another independent civilization, one among thousands, free to make their own choices. Kang Tae-won began reviewing military expansion plans that had been shelved for years. Han Sora started approving colony applications that had been delayed to avoid appearing too aggressive. Dr. Shin Junho launched research projects into technologies the Council discouraged as too dangerous or unpredictable. In her office, President Yoon Ji-hye looked at the holographic star map showing human space. 147 colonies glowed like fireflies in the darkness. It was time to let them shine brighter. "Let's see what we can build," she said quietly to herself, "when we stop asking permission." 5 years passed like water flowing downhill, natural and unstoppable. The galaxy watched humanity with uncertain eyes, waiting for the anger or violence that Council predictions promised. It never came. Instead, something more disturbing occurred. Humanity simply continued being human, but without apologizing for it. John Min-jae stood on the observation deck of Colony Station Frontier, looking out at the red planet below. It was designated as uninhabitable by Council standards. Too much radiation, too thin an atmosphere, gravity slightly too high for comfortable living. But humans had never let uninhabitable stop them before. Below, 15,000 colonists were building a city in the rust-colored valleys, using technologies the Council considered too risky or unnecessary. Min-jae had become the unofficial leader of the Free Colonies Alliance, a loose organization of settlements that operated independently of Earth's direct control. They were farmers and miners, scientists and dreamers, all of them people who chose hard work on dangerous worlds over comfortable lives on Earth. The Council called these colonies reckless. Min-jae called them humanity's future. "Another transport just arrived from Earth," his assistant reported. 3,000 more settlers, plus equipment for the atmosphere processors. Min-jae smiled. The colony applications had tripled since humanity stopped seeking Council approval. People felt free to take risks again, to push boundaries without worrying about what alien bureaucrats might think. The free colonies now numbered over 200 settlements, and new ones appeared every month. Across the galaxy, Onari sat in a modest office on the trade station called Crossroads. The station existed in neutral space, outside Council control, a place where independent merchants and minor civilizations gathered for business. Nari had been a translator for the council delegation once, fluent in 11 alien languages. Now she used those skills for something more important. The Independent Diplomatic Corps was her creation, funded by private donations and staffed by volunteers. They made contact with species the Council ignored, younger civilizations not yet ready for Council membership, fringe colonies, and isolated settlements. Nari's team offered something simple: conversation without judgment, trade without restrictions, and friendship without requirements. A Kalathi merchant approached her desk, his scaled face showing what she had learned to recognize as nervousness. The Kalathi were herbivores, peaceful traders who had been part of the council for 300 years. But this one wore no council badge. "I represent a group of Kalathi colonies on the rim," he said quietly. "We're tired of council regulations limiting our trade routes. We've heard humans don't require permissions or forms for simple commerce." Nari smiled warmly. "We don't. If you have goods to sell, we have markets that want them. If you need supplies, we have ships that can deliver them. No committees, no waiting periods, no approvals needed." The merchant's eyes widened. "Just like that? Just like that? We're building something different out here, a network based on mutual benefit, not bureaucratic control." By the end of the meeting, the Kalathi colonies had joined the growing web of independent trade. They were the 47th species to do so, and more arrived every week. The Council's monopoly on galactic commerce was quietly crumbling, not through force, but through simple obsolescence. Captain An Hyunwoo guided his exploration vessel, the Pathfinder, through a region of space marked as hazardous on Council charts. His crew of 60 included humans, 2 Kalathi traders, a Thrain engineer who had defected from Council space, and a young Velkari who left her homeworld seeking adventure. It was exactly the kind of mixed crew the Council said was impossible. Too many cultural differences, too much potential for conflict. In practice, they worked perfectly. Different perspectives meant better problem solving. Different species meant a wider range of skills and knowledge. "Captain, we're picking up signals from a planet in the 4th orbit," his sensor officer reported. "It looks like technology, but it's not matching any known council species." Hyunwoo leaned forward with interest. "Take us in slowly. Let's see what we've found." The planet was green and blue, obviously inhabited. The signals resolved into a complex network of communications and energy signatures. A civilization, and one the Council had never catalogued. The Pathfinder had discovered first contact. Following the protocols Hyunwoo himself had helped write, they transmitted peaceful greetings in multiple formats. The response came within hours, curious, cautious, but welcoming. The species called themselves the Torani, mammalian bipeds with technology roughly equivalent to Earth's 22nd century. They had detected Council ships passing through their system before, but had been ignored. "They didn't meet Council standards for contact," Hyunwoo explained to the Torani leadership via hologram. "Too primitive by their measurements. But humanity doesn't believe in primitive species. We believe in potential." The Torani became the 17th new species humanity had made first contact with in 5 years. None of them had been deemed worthy of Council attention. All of them became part of the growing network of independent civilizations that humans called the Open Trade Initiative. Back on Earth, Park Seo-hyun examined the prototype with satisfaction. Her company, Stellar Dynamics Corporation, had just completed the first human-designed faster-than-light drive that didn't rely on reverse-engineered Council technology. It was built from the ground up using human physics, human engineering, and human innovation. The drive was faster than Council designs, it was cheaper to produce, it required less exotic materials, and most importantly, it was theirs, not borrowed, not copied, not dependent on anyone else's technology or permission. "Start production," she ordered. "I want 1,000 units ready within 6 months." Her chief engineer looked stunned. 1,000? That's more than our entire current fleet uses. We're not just replacing our ships, Seo-hyun explained. We're offering them for sale. Independent traders, colony transports, exploration vessels, anyone who wants speed and reliability without council restrictions. The first drives hit the market 3 months later. They sold out within days. Alien merchants who had used council-approved drives for centuries discovered human technology was better. More importantly, buying human drives meant freedom from council oversight and regulations. Within a year, 30% of ships in independent space were using human FTL drives. Within 2 years, that number rose to 60%. The Council watched with growing concern as their technological monopoly dissolved. Lee Hanna, now leading Earth's Xenocultural Studies program, published a paper that caused waves across academic circles. She documented how species that left Council influence showed increased innovation, faster economic growth, and higher cultural diversity. The Council's stability, she argued, was actually stagnation wearing a respectable mask. Several young scholars from Council species reached out to her privately, expressing agreement they couldn't voice publicly. Some even asked about opportunities to study on Earth or in human colonies. Hanna welcomed them, and soon human universities hosted alien students seeking an education the Council couldn't provide, one that encouraged questions instead of memorization, challenge instead of acceptance. On the ice moon of Titan, construction crews finished the largest shipyard humanity had ever built. It could produce 50 vessels simultaneously, from small scouts to massive colony ships. Kang Tae-won toured the facility with pride. Humanity's military had quietly grown to a force that could defend every human settlement and assist allies in need. Not for conquest. Humans had learned that lesson centuries ago, but for protection. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was the catalyst. Not through violence or domination, but through simple demonstration that another way was possible. A way without endless bureaucracy, without stifling regulations, without the need to ask permission before trying something new. The Council held emergency sessions discussing the human problem, but they couldn't agree on solutions because humanity wasn't violating any laws. They were just being successful. And that success made others question why they needed the Council at all. John Minji received a message from Earth containing a single sentence. Colony applications are exceeding our projections by 400%. The future is brighter than we dreamed. He looked out at the red planet below, now showing patches of green where atmosphere processors were working their magic. Humanity wasn't seeking approval anymore. They were too busy building the future to care about the past. The message arrived on every newscast, every information network, every communication channel across the galaxy. The Vorenthi, a peaceful species known for their philosophical writings and beautiful crystal architecture, were facing extinction. A massive asteroid storm, remnant of an ancient planetary collision, was on collision course with their homeworld. Impact would occur in 6 months. Nothing would survive. The Vorenthi had been council members for 800 years. They had followed every rule, paid every contribution, attended every session. Now they needed help, and they needed it desperately. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Commander Bak Jiho watched the proceedings from his office on the military station orbiting Mars. He had commanded fleet operations for 3 years, overseeing humanity's expanding defense network. The Council's response to the Vorenthi crisis made his blood run cold. The Council recognizes the tragedy facing the Vorenthi people, the Velkari matriarch announced. We offer our deepest sympathies and will observe a moment of silence in their honor. That was it. Sympathy and silence. No rescue fleet, no technological assistance, no intervention. A Vorenthi delegate, her crystalline features showing desperation, stood to plead. But the Council has the resources to help. Your defense fleets could destroy or deflect the asteroids. Your engineering corps could strengthen our planetary shields. The matriarch's response was gentle but firm. Council regulations prohibit military intervention in natural disasters. Such events are part of the universal cycle. To interfere would be to disturb the natural order. Natural order. Baek Jiho felt sick. They were going to let an entire species die because helping them might break their precious regulations. He checked the data his analysts had compiled. The Vorenti system had 4 billion inhabitants. Their civilization had existed for 12,000 years. They had contributed art, philosophy, and scientific discoveries to galactic culture. And the Council was going to watch them burn because saving them might be improper. Jiho contacted Earth immediately. The connection went directly to President Choi Hanul, who had succeeded Yoon Ji-hye 2 years earlier. She was younger than her predecessor, barely 50, but she had built her career on making hard decisions quickly. "I watched the council session," she said before Jiho could speak. "Tell me we can help them." "We can," Jiho replied. "It would require deploying our entire defense fleet to non-council space. We'd be operating without any authorization, probably violating a dozen different regulations. The council would condemn it." Hanul smiled grimly. "Good thing we stopped caring about council approval. How long until you can deploy?" 72 hours. You have 48. I want our ships in Vorenti space before the council realizes what's happening. The mobilization was the largest in human history. Every military vessel, every defense platform that could be moved, every weapon system that might be useful, all of it converged on the staging area near Mars. Admiral Song Yuna took command of the operation. She was a veteran of the Martian conflicts, known for her ability to coordinate complex operations under pressure. The fleet that emerged from faster-than-light travel in Vorenti space 3 days later was breathtaking. 200 warships, 50 support vessels, and 30 mobile defense platforms. Every ship flew human colors, making no attempt to hide their identity or intentions. The Vorenti were stunned. They had received no notice, no warning. One moment they were facing extinction alone, and the next, a massive alien fleet appeared in their system. Song Yuna broadcast on all channels. "This is Admiral Song Yuna of the Human Defense Fleet. We're here to help with your asteroid problem. We don't need the Council's permission, and we're not asking for yours. We're just here to make sure you survive." The Vorenti leadership managed to stammer out their gratitude. Song immediately set her fleet to work. Dr. Nam Ji-hoo had been brought along specifically for this mission. He was humanity's leading astrophysicist, the man who had calculated the trajectories that put human colonies on the most distant worlds. Now, he faced his greatest challenge, calculating intercept courses for 3,000 asteroids, each traveling at different speeds and angles. "The storm is more complex than initial reports suggested," he told Admiral Song. "We can't just blast everything. Some asteroids are too large. Destroying them would create smaller fragments that are even harder to track. We need surgical precision." Song nodded. "Then we'll be surgical. Break the fleet into teams. Each team takes a section of the storm. Fighters handle the small rocks. Capital ships take the big ones. Coordination is everything." What followed was the most complex military operation humanity had ever attempted. Every ship had its role, every pilot had their targets. The operation was broadcast across the galaxy thanks to human news networks that followed the fleet. Billions of beings watched as humanity did what the Council said was impossible. The human fighters moved like silver birds through the asteroid field, their pilots threading between tumbling rocks with skill that seemed impossible. Energy weapons flashed, turning stone to vapor. Kinetic impactors struck precisely calculated points, altering trajectories rather than destroying. Tractor beams grabbed smaller asteroids and flung them away from collision courses. The capital ships handled the massive asteroids, some as large as moons. They couldn't be destroyed. The debris would be worse than the originals. Instead, the warships used their main batteries to carve away sections, reducing mass and changing trajectory. It was like performing surgery with weapons designed for warfare. For 37 days, the human fleet worked without rest. Crews operated in shifts, sleeping in their stations, eating rations while calculating trajectories. Dr. Nam Ji-Hu lost weight and gained gray hair, spending every waking moment verifying calculations and adjusting plans. The Vorenthi watched in amazement. Their own defense fleet consisted of 12 patrol ships, designed for ceremony rather than combat. They had nothing that could help, so they did what they could. They sent food, water, and messages of gratitude. Vorenthi artists created works honoring the humans who fought to save them. Vorenthi musicians composed symphonies about the silver ships that danced among the stones. On day 37, Dr. Nam Ji-Hu ran his final calculations and allowed himself a smile. "Admiral, the last asteroid has been diverted or destroyed. Vorenthi Prime is safe." The moment Admiral Song made the announcement, the Vorenthi homeworld erupted in celebration. 4 billion beings looked up at their sky, knowing they would see tomorrow because strangers had chosen to help. Song broadcasted a final message that would be repeated across the galaxy for generations. Her words were simple, direct, and completely human. To anyone listening, this is what humanity believes. We help those who need it. We don't wait for committees to approve it. We don't form councils to debate it. We don't check if it's proper or convenient. We see someone in trouble, and we help. That's not a human thing. That's not a species thing. That's just the right thing. And if that bothers the council, then maybe they need to reconsider what being civilized actually means. The transmission ended. The human fleet remained in Vorenthi space for another week, making certain every last fragment was tracked and accounted for. Then they returned home, leaving behind a species that would never forget them. The Vorenthi leadership called an emergency session of their own government. The vote was unanimous. Within 48 hours, they formally withdrew from the Galactic Council. Their statement was brief. "We choose to stand with those who stood with us. We choose humanity's alliance over the Council's indifference." The Council held emergency sessions, trying to understand what had happened. The Velkari matriarch called the rescue operation a dangerous precedent and a violation of natural law. Other species questioned why helping people survive was considered dangerous. Back on Earth, President Choi Haneul received Admiral Song in her office. The Admiral looked exhausted, but satisfied. "The Council is furious," Haneul told her. Song shrugged. "Let them be furious. We saved 4 billion lives. That's worth any amount of alien disapproval." "It's already having effects," the President said, showing her reports. 3 more species have withdrawn from the Council in the past week. They're calling it the Vorenthi effect. Species are questioning why they need Council membership if the Council won't help them in crisis. Song smiled. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the galaxy needed to see that there's another way. A way where you don't need permission to do the right thing. Across the galaxy, young members of Council species watched recordings of the Vorenthi rescue and asked their leaders uncomfortable questions. Why didn't we help? Why did it take humans to save them? What's the point of our Council if it can't protect its own members? The questions had no good answers, and that silence spoke louder than any speech. Humanity hadn't set out to break the Council's authority. They had simply acted according to their nature, seeing someone in need and refusing to walk away. The day humanity stopped seeking approval was also the day they showed the galaxy what approval really meant. Not permission from bureaucrats, but respect earned through action. The Vorenthi would never forget it, and neither would anyone else who watched. The Vorenthi rescue changed everything. It was like dropping a stone into still water, watching the ripples spread outward in circles that touched every shore. Within 6 months of the asteroid crisis, 14 species formally withdrew from the Galactic Council. Some were entire civilizations, others were colony groups or splinter factions. All of them cited the same reason. They wanted to be part of something that acted instead of debated. Ambassador Im Suji found herself hosting an unexpected meeting on Earth. The conference hall in Geneva was packed with representatives from species she had never met before. Some were former council members. Others were independent civilizations that had watched from the sidelines. All of them wanted to talk about building something new. "We don't want another council," a Kalathi representative said firmly. His name was Torvin, and he spoke for 17 colony worlds that had split from the main Kalathi government. "We've seen what councils become. Bureaucratic, slow, more concerned with procedure than action." "Then what do you want?" Suji asked. A Thrain military commander named Kelvix answered. Her species were warriors, respected across the galaxy for their strength and honor. "We want what humans built, a network based on mutual benefit, not hierarchy, where membership means cooperation, not submission." Suji smiled. This was exactly what humanity had hoped would happen. Not building an empire, but inspiring others to build something together. Over the next 3 months, she helped structure what became known as the Coalition of Independent Worlds. It wasn't a government. It had no capital planet, no ruling council, no complex hierarchy. Instead, it was an alliance based on simple principles: mutual defense, open trade, shared knowledge, and the freedom to be yourself. Any civilization could join by simply declaring their intention to cooperate. There were no applications to file, no standards to meet, no waiting periods. If you wanted to trade freely, defend each other, and share discoveries, you were in. If you later decided to leave, you could do that too. The coalition trusted its members to make their own choices. Within a year, the coalition included over 40 species and more than 200 independent colonies. It wasn't large compared to the Council, which had 73 member species spanning thousands of worlds. But the coalition was growing, and more importantly, it was thriving. Researcher Quan Min-jung published her groundbreaking paper during this period. She had spent 8 years analyzing council records, archaeological data, and technological patents. Her findings shocked the academic world. The stagnation thesis proved what Dr. Shin Junho had suspected years earlier. Council civilizations stopped innovating after joining. Their technological advancement flatlined. Their cultural development slowed to a crawl. Their populations became stable, which sounded positive until you realized it meant no growth, no change, no evolution. Meanwhile, independent species, especially humanity, had made more progress in 50 years than the Council had managed in 800. Human technology had surpassed Council designs in multiple fields. Human medicine advanced faster. Human arts and culture exploded with creativity that Council species hadn't shown in centuries. The paper spread like wildfire through academic networks. Young scholars from Council species read it in secret, afraid to discuss it openly. Some of them reached out to Min-jung directly, providing her with additional data from their own civilizations. The evidence was overwhelming. The Council didn't make species better. It made them comfortable, and comfortable species stopped trying. Captain Lee Dae-hyun commanded a very different kind of mission during this time. He led the first joint coalition expedition into the Galactic Core, a region the Council had declared forbidden territory millennia ago. The Council claimed the core was too dangerous, too unstable, filled with hazards that could destroy any ship that entered. Dae-hyun's expedition included human vessels, Vorenthi science ships, Kalathi traders, and Thrain escorts. It was the kind of mixed fleet that proved the coalition wasn't just humanity in disguise. It was something genuinely new. What they found in the core shocked everyone. Ancient automated defense stations, millions of years old, programmed to attack any ship that approached. They weren't natural hazards. They were weapons, left behind by whatever civilization had controlled the galaxy before the Council existed. The Council knew these were here, Daehyun reported back to Earth. They found them long ago and decided the easiest solution was to declare the entire region forbidden rather than figure out how to shut them down. The Coalition decided to shut them down. It took 6 months of careful work, combining human technical skills with Vorenthi mathematical precision and Thrain military protection. They deactivated the defense grid station by station, opening up thousands of new star systems for exploration. The Council watched with growing alarm. The Forbidden Zone had been their ace in the hole, a region they controlled by declaring it off-limits. Now that control was broken, and species across the galaxy wondered what else the Council had been hiding. Back on Earth, political tensions were rising within Council space itself. Young Velkari were leaving their homeworlds in unprecedented numbers, seeking lives in human colonies or Coalition space. They wanted adventure, opportunity, and the freedom to fail and try again. The Velkari matriarch declared them traitors, but thousands more left anyway. Similar patterns emerged across Council species. The young didn't want stability, they wanted possibility, and the Coalition offered that in abundance. President Choi Han-yul received an unexpected message during this period. It came from the Velkari matriarch herself, delivered through heavily encrypted channels. The Council wanted to meet with humanity, not to condemn them, to invite them. Han-yul read the invitation 3 times, hardly believing it. The Galactic Council, the same organization that had rejected humanity 15 years ago and again 5 years ago, was now offering immediate membership with no probationary period. Full status, complete voting rights, a seat at the table humanity had begged for. She called an emergency cabinet meeting. Park Min-ho, now retired but serving as an advisor, attended via hologram. General Kang Tae-won limped in, older now but still sharp. Admiral Song Yuna came directly from Fleet Headquarters. Dr. Shin Junho, Ambassador Im Suji, researcher Kwon Min-jung, all the people who had helped humanity find its own path, gathered in one room. "They're scared," Kang said bluntly. "They're losing species to the Coalition. They're watching their technological edge disappear. They're seeing young members of their own civilizations leave. This isn't a genuine invitation, it's damage control." Min-jung agreed. "If humanity joins the Council now, it legitimizes them again. It says that the Council is still the ultimate goal, that we were wrong to leave. It undermines everything the Coalition has built." "But it's also what we originally wanted," one minister pointed out. 15 years ago, we would have celebrated this invitation." Park Min-ho spoke up, his voice clear despite his age. 15 years ago, we wanted validation. We thought the Council's approval meant we had value. Now we know better. Our value comes from what we do, not what others say about us." Im Suji added her perspective. "The Coalition is working because it's voluntary and equal. If humanity rejoins the Council, it sends a message that hierarchy matters, that there's a right way and wrong way to organize civilizations. We'd be betraying everything we've built." President Han-yul listened to everyone's input, then made her decision. She would go to the Council station personally. Not to accept their invitation, but to decline it in person. And she would do it publicly, with every species in the galaxy watching. Professor Yu Mina, who now served as Secretary of State, was chosen to write the speech. She spent 3 days crafting every word, knowing that what the president said would echo across the galaxy for generations. "Make it clear but not cruel," Han-yul instructed. "The Council isn't evil. They're just afraid of change. We're not rejecting them. We're choosing a different path." The stage was set. President Choi Han-yul would stand before the Galactic Council and tell them no, not because humanity hated them, but because humanity had finally learned to value itself. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Humanity had spent 15 years desperate for the Council's invitation. Now that it finally came, they would turn it down. The day humanity stopped seeking approval was about to be completed. The galaxy held its breath. waiting to see what would happen next.